There is a kind of calm that makes people think something is wrong with you. Not because you are cold, not because you are emotionless, not because you are pretending to be strong, but because when life hits most people, they become easy to control. One message changes their mood. One insult controls their whole day. One rejection makes them bitter. One problem turns their mind into a battlefield. They do not choose their response. Their fear chooses. Their anger chooses. Their ego chooses. But then there is that one person. Bad news arrives, and he stays quiet. Criticism comes, and he does not rush to defend himself. Anger rises inside him, but he does not hand it control. Pressure builds, but his face stays calm. And to everyone watching, it looks almost unnatural, because reactive people cannot understand someone who no longer belongs to their chaos. In Japanese philosophy, this state is called Heijoshin, the steady everyday mind. It is the ability to keep the same inner center, whether life is peaceful or falling apart. But Alexander was not born with this calm. He used to lose entire days because of one message, one argument, one fear, or one thought he could not control. Until he discovered that real calm is not something you wait for, it is something you train. And today, you will learn the same Japanese method Alexander used to stop being controlled by pressure, fear, anger, and emotional noise. Before we begin, subscribe to Presence and Purpose for calm strength, clear thinking, and a life guided by purpose instead of noise. Alexander was not a weak man. That was the mistake people made when they looked at him from the outside. He had a job, responsibilities, a routine, people who depended on him, and a life that looked stable enough to be called normal. But inside, Alexander was never still. His body moved through the day, but his mind was always running ahead of him. One message could change his mood. One delayed reply could make him overthink for hours. One small criticism could replay in his head until midnight. One difficult conversation could make his chest tighten before it even began. And the strange part was, most people never saw this. They saw him smile. They saw him answer calmly. They saw him say, "It's fine." But it was not fine. Inside, Alexander was fighting battles no one had declared. A simple comment from a colleague became an attack. A small mistake became proof that he was falling behind. Silence from someone he cared about became a story his mind invented, edited, and replayed until it felt real. He was not living in the present. He was reacting to everything. If someone spoke sharply, he reacted. If plans changed, he reacted. If someone misunderstood him, he reacted. If life did not move the way he expected, he reacted. Sometimes the reaction was visible. He would defend himself too quickly, speak too strongly, or send a message he later regretted. But most of the time, the reaction happened quietly. He would withdraw. He would overthink. He would imagine conversations that had not happened. He would prepare arguments he would never say out loud. And every night, he felt tired. Not because the day had been too hard, but because his mind had treated every small moment like a threat. The first real realization came on an ordinary Tuesday. Nothing dramatic happened. No disaster. No major failure. Just a short comment during a meeting. "This needs to be better next time." That was all. But Alexander felt something rise in him immediately. Heat in his face. Tightness in his jaw. Pressure in his chest. His mind started building a defense before the sentence had even fully landed. He wanted to explain. He wanted to prove himself. He wanted to show that he was not careless, not lazy, not behind. But then, for the first time, he noticed something. The criticism was small. His reaction was not. And that realization disturbed him more than the comment itself. Because in that moment, Alexander understood a painful truth. His life was not being controlled by what happened to him. It was being controlled by how quickly he reacted to it. At first, Alexander thought his problem was stress. That was the easiest explanation. Work was stressful. People were stressful. Deadlines were stressful. Family expectations were stressful. Life itself felt like one long list of things asking for his attention. So he kept telling himself the same story. If work becomes easier, I will be calm. If people stop pressuring me, I will be fine. If life slows down, I will finally feel peaceful. But life did not slow down. There was always another message, another problem, another delay, another person who misunderstood him, another situation that did not happen the way he expected. And every time something happened, Alexander lost his center. Not always loudly, not always visibly, but internally, he moved. A small comment could pull him into defensiveness. A delayed reply could pull him into overthinking. A mistake could pull him into shame. A disagreement could pull him into anger. An uncertain future could pull him into fear. Slowly, he began to understand something uncomfortable. The world was not controlling him directly. His reactions were. Stress was only the trigger. His real problem was obedience. Every emotion that appeared inside him became an instruction. When anxiety appeared, he obeyed it by overthinking. When anger appeared, he obeyed it by preparing arguments. When fear appeared, he obeyed it by delaying action. When insecurity appeared, he obeyed it by seeking reassurance. When pressure appeared, he obeyed it by abandoning presence. He had spent years believing his emotions were telling him the truth. But most of the time, they were only telling him what felt urgent. And urgent is not the same as true. This was the hidden problem. Alexander did not have a stressful life. He had an untrained gap between feeling and response. Something would happen, a feeling would rise, and before awareness could enter, he had already reacted. There was no space, no pause, no breath, no moment where he could choose who he wanted to be. His emotions arrived like visitors, but he treated them like masters. That night, Alexander sat alone and looked back at his day. Nothing truly terrible had happened, yet his body felt as if he had been fighting all day. That was when he understood the truth. Peace was not going to come from controlling life. Peace would come from learning how not to be controlled by every feeling life created. This is where Alexander discovered a Japanese principle called Heijoshin. In simple words, Heijoshin means the steady everyday mind. It is the ability to keep the same inner state whether life is peaceful or chaotic. Not only when everything is easy, not only when people are kind, not only when the room is quiet and your responsibilities are light, but when pressure arrives, when someone criticizes you, when plans fall apart, when a message triggers fear, when anger rises in your chest, when life becomes heavy without warning. Heijoshin does not mean you feel nothing. That is the mistake many people make when they see someone calm. A calm person still feels anger. A calm person still feels fear. A calm person still feels pressure. A calm person still feels the weight of the moment. But the difference is this: they do not allow every feeling to become their leader. Their anger can rise, but it does not choose their words. Their fear can appear, but it does not make their decisions. Their anxiety can speak, but it does not write the whole story. Their pressure can grow, but it does not push them out of themselves. This was completely different from the way Alexander had lived. Before, if someone criticized him, his mind became a courtroom. He had to defend himself, explain himself, and prove he was not wrong. If someone replied late, his mind became a storyteller. It created meanings, fears, and conclusions with no real evidence. If something went wrong, his mind became a battlefield. One part wanted to stay calm, another part wanted to panic, another part wanted to blame someone. He thought this was normal, and maybe it was normal. But normal does not mean free. Heijoshin showed him another way. The goal was not to stop emotion from appearing. The goal was to stop moving every time emotion appeared. Because between what happens and how you respond, there is a small space. Most people never enter that space. They jump straight from feeling to reaction and then call it personality. I am just emotional. I am just stressed. I am just like this. But Heijoshin teaches something different. You are not every reaction that rises inside you. You are the awareness that can choose whether to follow it. And for Alexander, that became the beginning of a steadier life. Alexander did not begin with a dramatic change. He did not quit his job. He did not disappear from people. He did not try to rebuild his entire personality overnight. He started with something almost too simple to respect. 3 breaths. That was the practice. Before replying, before defending, before explaining, before reacting, before letting anger choose his words or fear choose his silence. He would take 3 slow breaths, not to avoid the moment, not to suppress what he felt, but to create a small space between emotion and action. The first time he tried it, it felt pointless. A message appeared on his phone. Someone had misunderstood something he said. The old Alexander returned immediately. His chest tightened, his fingers moved toward the screen. His mind started building the perfect reply before he had even understood the full message. He wanted to correct them. He wanted to explain himself. He wanted to make sure they did not think badly of him. But then he remembered the rule. 3 breaths. The first breath did not calm him. His mind was still loud. The second breath made him more uncomfortable because his body wanted movement, action, release. But by the third breath, something small changed. The message was still there. The emotion was still there. The situation had not disappeared. But Alexander was no longer trapped inside the reaction. He could see it now. He could see the need to defend. He could see the fear of being misunderstood. He could see the old habit trying to take control. And because he could see it, he had a choice. That was the first victory. Not silence, not peace, not perfect control, just choice. For the next few days, he used the 3-breath rule everywhere. When traffic slowed down and irritation rose. 3 breaths when someone interrupted him while speaking. 3 breaths when shame appeared after a mistake. 3 breaths when he wanted to send a cold reply just to protect his ego. 3 breaths. He still failed sometimes. He still reacted too quickly. He still remembered the rule after the damage was already done. But even then, something was changing. For the first time, Alexander was noticing the exact moment where he usually lost himself. And slowly, that tiny space between feeling and reaction became the place where his calm began. But this is where the real training began. Because the moment Alexander started creating space before reacting, something inside him started fighting back. At first, he thought calm would feel peaceful. He imagined that once he understood Heijoshin, his mind would become quiet, his emotions would soften, his reactions would disappear on their own. But that is not what happened. The old self did not leave quietly. It came back louder. When Alexander paused before replying, his mind said, "You are letting them win." When he stayed quiet during criticism, his mind said, "They will think you are weak." When he chose not to explain himself immediately, his mind said, "If you do not defend yourself now, they will misunderstand you forever." And this was the part Alexander had never noticed before. His reactions did not feel like reactions. They felt like protection. Anger felt like strength. Defensiveness felt like self-respect. Overthinking felt like preparation. Worry felt like responsibility. Control felt like safety. That was why change was difficult. He was not only trying to stop bad habits, he was trying to stop trusting the habits that had protected him for years. One evening, someone sent him a message that felt cold. Nothing openly rude, nothing clearly disrespectful, just short, dry, different. And immediately, the old pattern appeared. His mind started building stories. Maybe they are upset. Maybe you said something wrong. Maybe you need to fix this right now. His hand moved toward the phone. Then he stopped. 3 breaths. But this time the breaths did not make him calm. They made him more aware of how badly he wanted to react. And that was uncomfortable. Because sometimes the pause does not remove the emotion. Sometimes the pause only shows you how strong the emotion really is. Alexander sat there, staring at the screen, feeling the pressure in his chest. Everything in him wanted to reply immediately, not because the message needed an answer, but because his body wanted relief. That was the hidden addiction. He was not addicted to solving problems. He was addicted to releasing discomfort. Every fast reply, every defensive explanation, every emotional reaction had been a way to remove tension from his body. But Heijoshin required something different. It required him to stay with the discomfort without obeying it, so he placed the phone down. No reply. Not yet. For 10 minutes his mind attacked him. This is stupid. You are pretending to be calm. Just reply and get it over with. But Alexander stayed. Not perfectly, not peacefully, but consciously. And after a while, something strange happened. The urgency began to fade. Nothing outside had changed. The message was still there. The uncertainty was still there. But inside, Alexander had done something different. He had felt the storm without feeding it. And for the first time, the old self did not get the reaction it came for. The first real test came on a morning Alexander did not expect. That is how real tests usually arrive. Not when your routine is perfect. Not when your mind is already calm. Not when you feel ready to prove how much you have changed. They arrive in ordinary moments, when you are tired, exposed, and one sentence is enough to pull the old self back to the surface. Alexander was sitting in a work meeting. It was supposed to be simple, a short review, a few updates, and then everyone would move on with their day. He had prepared his part carefully the night before because he wanted everything to go smoothly. For once, he felt ready, but halfway through his presentation, his manager stopped him. "This is not strong enough," he said, looking at the screen. "I expected better from you." The room became quiet. Alexander felt the sentence hit his body before his mind could fully process it. Heat rose in his face. His jaw tightened. His stomach dropped. His chest became heavy. The old Alexander appeared immediately. "Defend yourself. Explain what happened. Tell them how much effort you put in. Do not let them think you are careless. Do not sit there looking weak." His mind started building arguments at full speed. He wanted to mention the unrealistic deadline. He wanted to explain the missing information. He wanted to point out that other people had delayed their parts. He wanted to protect his image before anyone in the room could judge him. And for a moment, the old reaction almost won. His lips parted. But then he remembered. 3 breaths. The first breath was almost invisible. No one in the room noticed it, but inside Alexander, it felt like trying to stop a moving train. His mind screamed, "Say something now." The second breath was harder. The embarrassment was still there. The anger was still there. The fear was still there. But something else was there too. Awareness. By the third breath, Alexander saw the situation more clearly. The criticism had already happened. The room had already heard it. The discomfort was already inside him. Reacting quickly would not erase any of it. It would only hand control of his voice to the part of him that felt threatened. So he stayed still. Not frozen. Not passive. Still. Then he looked at his manager and said calmly, "I understand. Can you point out the specific areas that need improvement so I can correct them properly?" The room stayed quiet for a different reason now. People were used to tension. They were used to defense. They were used to someone explaining, blaming, shrinking, or reacting. But Alexander did none of those things. His manager paused, almost as if he had expected resistance and did not know what to do without it. Then he pointed to the weak areas. Alexander listened. No interruption, no defensive tone, no emotional performance. And the strange thing was, the more he listened without reacting, the clearer the feedback became. Some of it was useful. Some of it was sharp. Some of it could have been delivered better. But it was not the enemy. It was information. After the meeting, one colleague walked beside him and said quietly, "I don't know how you stayed so calm in there. I would have lost it." Alexander almost smiled. Because the truth was, he had not felt calm the entire time. He had felt anger. He had felt shame. He had felt the old self pushing against the door. But for the first time, those feelings did not become his behavior. That day, Alexander understood Heijoshin more deeply. Calm is not when nothing moves inside you. Calm is when everything moves inside you, but you do not abandon your center. This is why calm people often look strange to the world. Not because they are empty, not because they are cold, not because they do not feel pressure, but because most people have lived in reaction for so long that reaction feels normal to them. They feel anger, so they speak. They feel fear, so they avoid. They feel insulted, so they defend. They feel uncertain, so they overthink. They feel discomfort, so they search for the fastest escape. To a reactive mind, this feels natural. So when someone like Alexander pauses instead of panicking, listens instead of defending, and breathes instead of attacking, it creates confusion. People do not always admire calmness at first. Sometimes they question it, because a chaotic mind expects other people to match its chaos. It expects tension to be answered with tension. It expects criticism to be answered with defense. It expects emotional heat to be answered with more heat. But a person practicing Heijoshin does something different. He does not allow the emotional temperature of the room to decide his inner state, and that can make people uncomfortable. Some will think you are hiding your feelings. Some will think you do not care. Some will think you are arrogant. Some will think your calmness is fake. Some will even try harder to provoke you, just to see if the old version of you is still there. But calm is not the absence of feeling. Calm is the refusal to be dragged by every feeling. Alexander began to understand this after the meeting. When he used to defend himself, over-explain or react emotionally, no one questioned it. That was normal. That was expected. But when he stayed centered, people noticed. Because self-control is rare in a world where people confuse emotional release with honesty. Many people say, "I am just being real," when what they really mean is, "I have never learned how to pause." And this is why calm looks strange. Because when you stop obeying every emotional storm, you become difficult for reactive people to understand. After that day, Alexander stopped trying to look calm. That was the shift. In the beginning, calmness felt like a technique, something he had to remember, something he had to force, something he had to practice with effort every time life disturbed him. But slowly, it became something deeper. It became the way he carried himself. He still felt anger, but he no longer trusted anger immediately. He still felt fear, but he no longer allowed fear to make every decision. He still felt pressure, but pressure no longer pushed him out of himself. This was not because life became easier. Life was still life. People were still impatient. Work was still demanding. Problems still arrived without warning. Some days were still heavy. But Alexander was no longer waiting for the world to become peaceful before he allowed himself to be peaceful. That was the real identity shift. He stopped saying, "I will be calm when things calm down." Instead, he began living from a different place. "I will stay steady even while things are not calm." And that changed everything. His voice became slower. His replies became cleaner. His decisions became less emotional. His presence became stronger without needing to become louder. People noticed it. Some respected him more. Some misunderstood him more. Some tried harder to provoke him, almost as if they wanted proof that the old Alexander was still there. But he was not interested in proving anything anymore. That was another sign of change. The old Alexander needed to be understood by everyone. The new Alexander understood himself enough to stop chasing explanations. Heijoshin had not made him cold. It had made him free. Free from instant reaction. Free from emotional noise. Free from the need to answer every trigger. Free from the habit of abandoning himself just because the moment became uncomfortable. And for the first time, Alexander realized that calm was not something he was doing. It was someone he was becoming. And maybe this is where your own training begins. Not in a monastery. Not in silence, not when life finally becomes easy, but in the next moment that tries to pull you out of yourself, the next message that makes your chest tighten, the next criticism that makes you want to defend, the next delay that makes your mind create stories. the next person who expects you to react the way you always have. That is where Heijoshin begins. Not by pretending you feel nothing, but by noticing what you feel before it becomes your behavior. Because calm is not weakness. Calm is the strength to feel the storm without becoming the storm. And when you learn to pause before reacting, breathe before speaking, and choose before obeying emotion, people may not understand you anymore. They may think you are too quiet, too steady, too different, maybe even crazy. But the truth is simple. You are no longer controlled by the chaos that controls them. You have found presence before reaction, and where presence lives, purpose becomes clear.